The Story King, where every tale unveils a truth hidden in the shadows of fate. The coin slipped from Elara's trembling fingers. It clinked against the cobblestones, spinning in the dim torchlight before settling in a crack, her last coin, rolling away like every other piece of hope in her miserable life. She was on her knees in the filthy market square, staring at that copper piece as if it were made of gold itself. 5 coins, the vendor repeated, his voice like gravel scraping metal. Take it or leave it, Omega. The word stung. It always did. In a world ruled by alphas, those blessed with strength, wealth, and the mark of supremacy glowing on their wrists, Omegas like Elara were less than dust. They lived in the lower district, scraping by on whatever scraps the upper classes discarded. No rights, no respect, no future. Elara's fingers closed around the coin. She looked up at the creature before her. It wasn't much to look at, a small, pitiful thing huddled in a rusted cage. A burlap sack had been tied roughly over its head, and its body shook with each labored breath. She could see its ribs through matted fur, and one of its paws was bent at an unnatural angle. What is it? She whispered. The vendor spat to the side. Mutt. Found it half dead in the northern wastes. Was gonna drown it, but figured some bleeding heart might pay a coin or two. His eyes narrowed. You got 5 coins, or are you wasting my time? Elara's hand went to the small leather pouch at her hip. Inside were 5 copper coins, her entire week's wages from scrubbing floors at the Alpha District bathhouses. It was supposed to buy her bread, medicine for the fever that had been burning through her body for days. A blanket before winter's teeth bit too deep. The creature whimpered. Something inside Elara's chest cracked open. She knew that sound. It was the same sound she made when she thought no one could hear, the sound of something broken, begging to be seen. I'll take it. The walk back to her shack took an hour. By the time Elara stumbled through her door, her fever had worsened, and the creature, still with that horrible sack on its head, was a dead weight in her arms. Her home was a single room with walls made of scavenged wood and a roof that leaked when it rained. But it was hers. She laid the creature on her only blanket and, with gentle fingers, untied the sack. What she saw made her gasp. Beneath the burlap was a wolf pup, or something like it. Its fur was silver white, almost luminescent in the candlelight, and its eyes were the color of midnight skies shot through with stars. One of those eyes was swollen shut, and a nasty scar ran from its ear to its snout. But it was beautiful. What did they do to you? Elara whispered, her voice breaking. The pup's good eye fixed on her, and for a moment, she could have sworn she saw something ancient and knowing in its gaze. Then it whimpered again and tried to crawl closer to her warmth. Elara had nothing, no food for herself, let alone for a starving animal. But she tore off a piece of her stale bread, softened it in water, and offered it to the pup. It ate from her hand with surprising gentleness, its pink tongue barely touching her palm. I'll call you Ash, she said softly, running her fingers through his matted fur. Because you've been through fire, and you survived. That night, they slept curled together on the floor, and for the first time in months, Elara didn't feel quite so alone. 3 days later, everything changed. Elara woke to find Ash standing by the window, his body rigid, a low growl rumbling in his throat. She'd never heard him make that sound before. What is it, boy? Then she heard the footsteps, heavy, deliberate, made by expensive boots on wooden planks. The door exploded inward, and 3 figures filled the frame. Alphas. She recognized them immediately by the golden marks glowing on their wrists, by the way they carried themselves like they owned the air they breathed. The one in front was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and eyes the color of steel. He wore the black and crimson uniform of the Supreme Guard, the Alpha King's personal enforcers. Elara Thornwood, he said, his voice deep and commanding. By order of Alpha Kale Darkmoor, you are to surrender the animal in your possession. Her blood went cold. What? Why? That's not your concern, Omega. His eyes flicked to Ash, and something flickered across his face, surprise. Fear. It was gone too quickly to tell. The creature is property of the crown. You will hand it over, or you will be arrested for theft. I bought him. Elara scrambled to her feet, placing herself between Ash and the guards. I have a right. You have no rights. The Alpha cut her off. His hand moved to the sword at his hip. Stand aside. Ash's growl intensified. The pup, so small and broken just days ago, now stood with his head lowered, teeth bared, that starlit eye blazing with fury. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. The Alpha in front raised his hand, and Elara saw power gathering around his fist, the elemental magic that only Alphas could wield. Final warning, Omega. Wait. Elara threw herself over Ash. Please, don't hurt him. He's just a pup. He's hurt. He needs. Commander Thorn. The new voice was quiet, but it cut through the room like a blade through silk. Everyone froze. Another Alpha stepped through the doorway, and Elara's breath caught in her throat. He was younger than the commander, perhaps mid-20s, with hair like spun gold and eyes that burned with an inner fire. His mark wasn't just glowing, it was blazing, a clear sign of immense power. But it was his face that made her stare. It was beautiful and terrible all at once, like a storm or a wildfire, something magnificent and dangerous that you couldn't look away from. Lord Kale, Commander Thorn said, immediately bowing. We were just. I can see what you were doing. Kale Darkmoor stepped into the room, his gaze sweeping over the scene before settling on Elara. She felt pinned by that stare, like a butterfly on a collector's board. And I can see that you were about to attack an unarmed Omega in her own home. My lord, the directive was clear. The directive was to locate the beast, not to terrorize innocent citizens. His voice was soft, but there was iron beneath the velvet. Leave us. But, now, the guards retreated, and suddenly Elara was alone with the most powerful Alpha in the kingdom. Her fever-weakened legs nearly gave out. Kale approached slowly, hands visible and non-threatening. When he spoke again, his voice had gentled. You're burning up. I'm fine, she lied. His eyes moved to Ash, who had stopped growling but remained tense. Something extraordinary happened then. Kale lowered himself to one knee, making himself smaller, less threatening. He extended his hand palm up toward the pup. Hello, little prince, he murmured. Ash's ears pricked forward. He took one tentative step toward Kale, then another. Then, to Elara's shock, the pup pressed his nose against the Alpha's palm. You recognize me, don't you? Kale's voice was barely a whisper. Or you recognize what I carry. What's going on? Elara demanded, her protective instinct overriding her fear. Why do you want him? What is he? Kale looked up at her, and she saw something unexpected in those burning eyes, respect. He's not a wolf, Kale said quietly. He's a celestial guardian, the last of his kind. 3 months ago, he was stolen from the royal temple as an egg. We've been searching for him ever since. Elara's world tilted. Celestial guardian, but those are just legends. No, they're real, and they bond with those they deem worthy, those with pure hearts, regardless of designation. Kale stood slowly. The question is, why did he bond with you? I didn't, I just. Elara struggled for words. He was hurt, he needed help, and you spent your last coins to save him, even though you were starving. It wasn't a question. Kale's eyes traveled over her threadbare clothes, her too thin frame, the fever flush on her cheeks. You gave him everything you had. It wasn't enough, she whispered. I still can't feed him properly. I can't take him to a healer. I'm just an Omega. Kale's voice turned sharp. Is that what you were going to say? She flinched. He sighed, and the harshness melted away. Elara Thornwood, in 3 days, you've done what dozens of my best trackers couldn't do in 3 months. You've earned the trust of a creature that can sense the truth of a person's soul. Do you understand what that means? She shook her head mutely. It means you're exactly the person he needs. Kale reached into his coat and pulled out a small velvet pouch. He placed it in her hands. This is first month's salary. You'll be appointed as the Guardian's official caretaker, with quarters in the royal district and access to the best healers in the kingdom, for both of you. Elara stared at the pouch. It was heavy, so heavy. When she opened it, gold coins glinted back at her. More money than she'd seen in her entire life. Why? She breathed. Why would you do this for an Omega? Kale's expression softened into something that might have been a smile. Because he chose you, and celestial guardians are never wrong about the worth of a soul. He reached out and, with surprising gentleness, placed his palm against her forehead. Cool energy flowed from his hand, and she felt her fever break instantly. Besides, strength has nothing to do with designation. My mother was an Omega. She was also the wisest, strongest person I ever knew. Tears burned in Elara's eyes. Come, Kale said, extending his hand. Let me show you your new home. Both of you. 3 months passed like a dream. Elara stood in the royal gardens, watching Ash play in the fountain. Except he wasn't small anymore. The pup had grown into a magnificent creature, nearly as tall as a horse, with silver-white fur that seemed to capture starlight and eyes that held the wisdom of ages. His injured paw had healed perfectly, and the scar on his face had faded to a thin silver line. He's beautiful, Kale said, appearing beside her like smoke. Over the past months, the Alpha had visited often. At first, Elara thought it was just to check on Ash. But then the visits became longer. They would talk about everything and nothing. He told her about the weight of leadership, and she told him about the weight of invisibility. He made her laugh. She made him think, and somewhere along the way, something had shifted between them. You were right, Elara said softly, about him choosing me. He saved my life just as much as I saved his. No. Kale turned to face her, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. You saved each other. That's what love does. It makes us worth saving. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Kale, I've been thinking, he continued, taking her hand in his. The mark on his wrist blazed brighter, and she felt its warmth. About designations, about worth, about the laws that say an Alpha can't. He stopped, jaw clenching. Foolish laws made by foolish men. What are you saying? I'm saying that Ash saw your worth when the world was blind. And he wasn't the only one. Kale's thumb traced circles on her palm. I'm saying that I want to change things. The system that nearly killed you, that would have let you die in that shack, it's broken. And I want to fix it. But I can't do it alone. You're the most powerful Alpha in the kingdom, she whispered. And you're the strongest person I know. He smiled, and it was like sunrise. Will you stand with me? Elara looked at Ash, who had stopped playing and was watching them with those knowing, starlit eyes. The Guardian, her guardian, dipped his great head in what could only be called approval. She looked back at Kale, at this Alpha who had seen her when she was invisible, who had valued her when the world said she was worthless. Yes, she said, I will. When he kissed her, right there in the royal gardens where anyone might see an Alpha kissing an Omega, Ash threw back his head and howled, a sound of pure joy that echoed across the kingdom. It was the sound of destiny fulfilled. It was the sound of love conquering prejudice. It was the sound of a new world being born. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create the mightiest ripples of change. Remember, worth is not given by the world, it's revealed by those who truly see. The Story King. Subscribe for more tales that touch the heart and awaken the soul.